Okay, so it's Ukemi week, and this is our instructor training session, and I want to put this down on tape so that people can refer to it after the event. Ukemi is breakfalling in English, and breakfalling is a very important part of our training. Basically, it's to start with to do with safety, so we have to protect ourselves when we're throwing. We do a locking and throwing martial art. So if one partner is throwing someone else, they have to be able to fall safely in order to receive that throw. It's very important that the level of our falling always exceeds the power of the throw. So we can trust ourselves when we're falling to protect ourselves. So the throw is always to do with the level of the person being thrown, never to do with the level of the person thrown. For that reason, as we get better, it is almost our duty to ourselves and our dojo to do the best we can at falling within our own ability. So your instructor is never going to make you do a fall that's harder than you are prepared to do, but you have to motivate yourself to learn the best falling that you can so that you can receive harder falls. And this is a cycle. So the better you are at falling, the harder you can be thrown safely and have fun. And then when you get to a much higher level, you can feel more technique and learn a lot more about Aikido. So I'm just going to put a few of the ideas down on tape, working with the other instructors here to help them teach as well. Okay. So we'll start with Keon Goa. An odd place to start, but I use this in the lesson to prime them for a lot of the feeling that they need for doing forward break falls and rear falls as well. So if we start with come on. Miki hammer, bang! And then just put your hands on your hips. So I don't want you to worry about your hands for Keon Goa. High ankle, chi, eight! Good. Now in this position, if you've done it correctly, your belt tie should be over your front heel. If you haven't done it correctly, this exercise will help with that as well. So if you've done it correctly, when I ask you to do what I'm going to ask you to do, you're going to move too far forward. So what I want you to do is, without raising your hips, move 2 or 3 inches forward, and so you may have to, without raising your hips, so your back foot might have to move forward. Try that now. That's it. And then hold that for a few seconds. Knee! Just go to the back foot like that. So we'll do the same for knee, tiny ankle, knee, eight. Okay, and then shift. Move your weight 2 or 3 inches forward. So you emphasize at this point that the weight should be going into the big toe, and they really start to feel this after a few seconds. So you don't need to make them hold it for much more than a few seconds. This is a particularly good one because this has the same feeling in it from the start. Shift. So this should take you a little bit too far forward. And for some of the students, it will give them the right feeling for Keon Goa again. Shift. Good. And come on it. So you get the idea that for the whole of the Keon Goa, you just get them to shift a little bit too far forward. It's very important for safety to make sure when you're practicing that the knee is bending naturally over the big toe. So as you go forwards, if their foot is turned out too far, and you need to check this in every position of their Keon Goa, if they try and relax their knee going forwards, they're going to go sideways and twist the knee. So you need to make sure that the 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock position is good, and when they bend the knee naturally, it bends over the big toe. So moving on to Ukemi back drops. We start always with the basic falls without the hand slapping. And this takes away, even with the advanced class, I like to look at these. Because while they might be good at these falls, they often have put in idiosyncrasies or things that they have copied that they don't quite understand. So it's good to take it back to strip it down to the very basics. The toes on the line, and you get the students to recognize, every one of them should be stood on the line and recognize where they're stood with their toes. So every time they get up, they can check and feel the line with their toes. When they do the backdrop, they must try and keep the bum go straight down to the heel, and try and keep the shoulder up, not to pitch forward too much. So, because generally when people pitch forward, their bum goes back. And after I make them do a few, so this is what I like to call, I got jokingly called the doctor, the Ukemi doctor the other day. This is what I like to call the diagnosis period. And so I'm looking at the falls and seeing what the group in general needs to improve, and think of one thing, the main thing, usually the thing that's most to do with safety. And the biggest thing that this week has been people pitching and putting their bum back, so the bum goes far away from the ankle. The distance, this is a nice phrase I like to use, the distance from your bottom to your heel is directly congruent or related to the pain that you feel when you're breakfalling. And that goes for almost every fall that we do. So if they're sticking their bum out and their bum lands far away from the heel, then they will feel pain in their coccyx. So if they squat straight down and they roll straight back from this position, then they won't feel any pain in their coccyx. And this is something that you correct at this stage, and then carry it forward and emphasize in the next falls. Another thing to check at this point is when they go back, the timing of them sticking their hips forward. So if they're forcing the hips up like this, that's okay for a beginner level, a beginner class. But for the higher grades, re-emphasizing what we did in the Keon, the hips should move forward at the right time. So it shouldn't be that the feet going over the head drag the hips off the ground, or that they kick up like this and push the feet out to that corner. The hips naturally follow the movement of the body. So we allow the hips to come forwards, and it makes the fall much easier. Another point, just allowing the hands to come back. A lot of people tense up in the shoulders, like this, and it makes the fall very difficult. So allowing the hands, everything to move together with the body. So, and then you make them do a few more. And this is just so you can check the learning. And then we move on to two hands. So with two hands, this is okay for a beginner level. But very quickly after beginner level, I like to move it to this. Because this, a habit that comes from this is to swing the hands back. Back like this, which is the same as reaching back, which is like this. Which is all related. If you think about teaching children, well, you can ask the students this to try and get them to answer the question for you. Why do people put their hands back? They're afraid. Because they're afraid, right? So the reason that they put their hands back is because their bum is too far away from their heel, because they're falling back, so they're afraid of hurting themselves on the floor. So we take away the fear and correct the fall in the first place. Once the fear is gone, you can say, right, now don't reach back. As you go down, place your hands up like this, and place your hands purposefully at the 45 degrees. Obviously, we emphasize the chin on the chest and things like that. After that, I sit them down. After we've practiced that, you guys don't need to practice that. After we've practiced that, there's a small talk. You talk about, there's 3 basic rules of falling. I might put this at the beginning sometimes. So I say, why do we do backdrops? And they say, to learn to roll, or something like that. And I say, okay, how many times in our syllabus do we use the backdrop? And the answer really is 0. There is no throw in our syllabus that uses the backdrop. There's a similar form here, which is a form I like to practice with the higher grades. You might move that onto the higher grades. But it is not the same as a pure backdrop. So there is 0 force, so why do we practice it? And the reason is, there are 3 things that we need to learn before we can learn to tumble. We protect the head, roll like a ball, and use energy forward to get back up. And you try and get that out of the students, but don't take too long about that. You give them it if they need, depending on the level. The higher grades should know that. So protect the head and the major organs. Roll like a ball, not like a dice. And use the energy forward to get back up. If you get those 3 mantras, if you like, into them, then you can relate that fall, the backdrop, to everything that you do, and you validate the backdrop as well. So then we move on to backdrop shoulder pivots.
Yes.
Okay, backdrop shoulder pivots. For this one, you're going to need, for safety, space behind you. So if you guys take a step forward, we're about to mess up the shot. Okay, so for backdrop shoulder pivots, I start with a very simple exercise, stepping back, and this is, you've got to make sure that, again, your knees point and bend in the right direction. So this is a safety point. If you want to trust yourself, and you want to train to an old age, which is what I want as an instructor and what I want for my students, I have to make sure that whenever I step back, I'm not turning my knee out like this unless I'm turning this way. So the weight is bending naturally over the big toe. The other thing is we're developing good habits, because as we step back, if you turn from a throw, and I might demonstrate this during a class, if you turn out of the iraminage that has any power in it at all, and you're looking towards a floor, you look where you're going, then that is very unsafe. So we're going to develop the habit of not turning. There is an element of side to all falls, but an element of side doesn't mean turning. So step forward. So we develop this exercise first of all, just stepping straight back, keeping the knees, shoulders and hips in line as you step back, and just bringing your weight to the back leg. I encourage them to bring their heels off the floor if they need to. It makes the exercise a little harder, but it's developing the right muscle in the right way, in a way that's not dangerous. And then step forward and back, and straighten that leg. So we're going to try that. Ich, in, san. Always coming back to that line, so they get an awareness of their position, or you get awareness of your position in the dojo. And once we've done that, then I might move on to just changing the body position, because this is where it gets confusing. Step out, people keep their hips straight. That's not right, and it's not good for uke either. It's not good for your knee, it's not good for uke, and it's not good for your ukemi, because you're encouraging yourself to tap. So as you step out at an angle, you must turn your body to face the angle. So now I've done the same exercise, but I've changed the angle of my body. So my knees, my hips, and my shoulders are all facing the way in the same way. And then back here. And you do the same exercise, but changing the angle. Okay. Ich, in, san, shi, o. Making sure that the bottom and the shoulders stay over the back heel. A lot of people will find that difficult because it's physically quite demanding. So you just get them, rather than to cheat or do the exercise incorrectly, just step back a shorter distance and take the pressure off the foot, so that it is less physically demanding and they learn the correct habit. You learn the correct habit, sorry. So, then we move on to a rear backdrop shoulder pivot. Okay, so for a backdrop shoulder pivot, you need to practice one side and then the other during class, so that it is safe. So everybody doing the right side only first of all. And make sure to practice right side and left side, because left side is actually way more common in your practice. Backdrop shoulder pivot, right side only. Good. Knee. Good. Now, if everybody's doing it at the same time, you should be able to get the angle and not kick the people next to you, even though you're close to each other. So, the other thing to remember is that you must face the wall in front of you, and this will stop you from turning into the fall. So already we've got out a couple of bad habits. Just by emphasizing looking at the wall in front, it stops people from turning this way. Then you do practice the left side. And you must practice the left side because most of the shiteiwaza, or the doing techniques, are on the right side, which means you fall on the left side. From this exercise, I'd be moving into another exercise, and this essentially is a single leg squat. So if you're not physically able to do this, then there are other exercises that you can build up the strength in your legs in the same way. So just looking at it, it's actually quite good fun when you do it, but it's very difficult, physically difficult. So I step back, and this is to the count. So I do a back drop to the count of 5. So there's ich, ni, and I count to 3 as we drop down, so that it's not just a drop. Ich, ni, san. At this point, if the student's right leg should be underneath their bum and their shoulder, the left leg should be out straight. If they want to put a hand down to balance, that's okay, but they shouldn't be leaning into that hand. Then they get up again. San, ich, ni, san. And by san, they should still have the left leg straight and the weight back. So this is quite demanding on the back leg. But it is safe because the knee is bending in the right direction. Then down again. Shi, ich, ni, san. And then they do the fall. So they must go, at this point, this is a really good check. They must go straight back into this fall. If they start to turn here, that is a bad habit, and I'll explain why in a second. So we go back. And only when you're on the ground, and your shoulders are the only thing on the ground, can you then turn around the shoulder. At that point, if you're turning into the fall, this is a good time to check it as an instructor. But as a student, it's also a good time to check yourself. It's also very good for the core muscles here that you need, this diamond shape here. You need this muscle here, the quads, these muscles even, and the abs here. This is very good muscle for the quads here, very good exercise for the quads. Okay, so practice that exercise. Right side open first of all. Ich. Good. And now as they go down, count in your head. Ni, ich, ni, san. So that it's smooth and you're not dropping. And then when you get up, the same count. San, ich, ni, san. Shi, ich, ni, san. Go. Very nice. And that's essentially the exercise. You can practice that leg squat on your own. Now, if we move on, it's a very good check for whether they're turning into the fall. And that's dangerous. So then going back to with a demonstration of the urumanage, I might reference Sensei Ken at this point and say, if you've been asked to, you're in an advanced class, your first cue or first dan, and Sensei Ken needs an Ukemi. He's looked at you, you've never done it before, it's urumanage. How do you feel? And usually the answer is nervous, which is correct. Because there's a difference when you get up to that level, because Sensei Ken will want to demonstrate the technique. The reason that you're nervous is that you don't trust yourself to take the fall. Good practice will eventually lead to you trusting yourself. And Sensei Ken is never going to throw someone beyond their ability, and he is more aware of that than we are, in fact, of our ability. But if you are uke for a demonstration, you need to be able to help them demonstrate the technique at that stage. And that is a step that only you can take on your own. You can't be forced into taking that step. And we can give you the tools and the training methods, but you have to take the step and use them to get to that level. So, essentially when you're training with a partner, you're training for the best form, not really for power at a basic level, and to enable your partner to practice the Kihon waza in the way that it's supposed to look. But when you demonstrate with a teacher, it's really about you protecting yourself and helping them demonstrate the Aikido. So, this is really talking to the more advanced fallers. If you want to step up to the plate, you need to get good habits. So, you need to stop this kind of thing, because I promise you, if you're thrown hard with urumanage and if you're falling like that you never have been, that fall will hurt your ribs and you may land on your arm. So all kinds of damage might come out. So we need to develop these good habits at a very basic level and then take them from there, just like the Keon Goa, take them from there into our training and advanced training as well. A good practice then, a good transition from the rear falling to the forward falling is on the ground. So we've all looked at an exercise where we practice just the going around the shoulder bit. And this is a good exercise in itself where we come back this way, come up to the shoulders and down, and we move to this angle here, and then back in the same way. It's kind of like a backstroke feeling. And that gives you the right idea for that fall, because we go straight back, the hand touches a fraction of a second before the shoulder, and then when the shoulder's the only thing on the ground, we can come around it. If the shoulder's not the only thing on the ground, it's very hard. And as a teacher, this is where I diagnose that, and then I can explain it to people. I need to see the air underneath their bottom. With so if we just do that exercise, perhaps come forwards. Okay, to the count. 8. In. Nice. 8. In. If you notice, as a student, when you're doing this, if you're doing it right side, one side and the other side, your feet should come back the same way as they went out. I move on from this, push back a little bit, and we do an exercise. And we used to just do this to develop the strength, the connection here between your upper body and your lower body. It's very important with forward rolling and rear falling as well. So we lift up the heels like this, and I explain that once we've lifted up the heels, that we keep them up for the entire exercise. And this can be quite physically demanding as well. Heels up, and then from here, we might start with counting to 5. I'm not going to count to 10 because we're going to be up and doing other exercises as well. But the idea is they copy the things that I do. So I say, count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go. Hold and watch. This way. Don't let the heels touch the floor. 1, 2, 3, that's it. And this is quite good fun as well. Doesn't matter if the heels do touch the floor, but we're developing the muscles and the strength here. She. Go. And develop, depending on your level, that is basically how harsh I will judge whether your heels touch the floor. Now, we can move that into a rear side fall, not touching the floor with your heels. Good. And by this time, the stomach's going to be aching quite a lot. And then we move it into landing position for a break fall. Heels don't touch the floor, both legs stay straight. Back, each. This way. So we're building up the each. We're building up the angle. If you both go the same one, building up the angle for the landing position. So then I can demonstrate while we're in this position that this is the angle. This way, one shoulder, one hip on the ground, and then knee, change. San, shi. If we can get success at doing this, then people who are having trouble, if you're having trouble keeping your heel off the ground when you fall, this will definitely help. San, shi, and we might finish coming up here again and counting to 5 again. That's it, and then down. Stretch. Make sure you stretch off after this exercise if you want to practice this at home. On the front. Good exercise is this. Stretching the stomach. And back here. So, with the stomach exercise, it's actually quite good to put in the side ones because it's a different group of muscles, and people that are struggling with keeping the legs up, if you're struggling with that, this will relieve those muscles for a little bit, but not completely. So it really builds your strength. And that's a nice transition into forward rolling. There's one more practice that I might do with higher grades or intermediate levels who are struggling with high back falls. And that is this. Some of you have done this week. nipple. This is to build up the confidence to move into high back falls. So you can start, the person can be, Jeff, can have you lying down here? On your front. So if they're really unconfident or with beginners like this, you can have them on here, but at this level. And they sit on the back, so there's a little raise off the floor. And again, you get them to make sure that the hand touches a fraction of a second before the shoulder, and the legs are strong. There's a connection between the upper and lower body here. The bottom touches the ground at this angle, not here. So you must check that your bum isn't sliding off here, because you'll wind yourself. And this is a really good check for that. So you just come a little bit higher, and it's not fast, it's not quick like this. Keep your body locked together. Hand slaps a fraction of a second before the shoulder. Okay, thanks, Dad. So then moving on to a forward roll. First of all, the diagnosis period.